So mind is the cause of happiness, and mind is the cause of pain. We hear this a lot in Buddhism, and maybe now even in psychology or in popular culture. But what does this mean? I found that it means that our thoughts and our beliefs shape our experiences. And the most important part of these experiences are the feelings, whether they're pleasant or neutral or painful. And Buddhism teaches that as sentient beings, we have a lot of distorted conceptions about how the world works. And this is due to the ignorance that's been in our minds since beginningless time. These distorted conceptions are often referred to as wrong views. And the more I practice, the more I can see how my wrong views or erroneous conceptions are actually what's responsible for my suffering, rather than whatever is actually happening in the moment. I think we've all heard this many times before, but then to catch it happening in your mind is actually quite profound. And I found that these wrong views often manifest in the form of expectations. For a while, I've wondered, why do I get triggered so easily when certain things happen? I'll feel like I'm having a pretty good day, my mind is pretty calm, it's stable, but then something will happen and I'll just get really agitated, really irritated so quickly. And I've come to see that this is because I'm carrying around a lot of expectations and holding on to them very tightly, and most of the time I don't even realize it. They're just in the back of my mind, and they condition how I react to certain things when they happen. The Venerable Chosen has often called these beliefs that we have about the world and how it works, or how it should work, as rules of the universe. And again, usually we don't stop to question them because they're so familiar to us. We don't even know that they're there. And they're also bound up with a lot of emotions, so they can be kind of painful to look at. And of course, whoever violates our rules of the universe is wrong, and we're completely justified in responding in any way that we like so that they change their view and join our side, because we're the right ones. So I want to share some of these unrealistic expectations that I have, that I've discovered, in case you might have them too. And I do feel like it's really helpful to see them on paper, because then I can actually formulate an opposite statement that has a bit more logic and reasoning, and then to train myself in these new ways of, or these new expectations, or these new ways of viewing the world, so that I can sort of lessen the likelihood that I just snap out or freak out in the future. So the first wacky expectation that I've had that leads to anger or surprise is that my body will not cause me a great deal of pain today. And this is less and less true the older I get. And not realizing that pain is a natural part of having a body, I use that as an excuse for self-pity or for grumpiness, when actually it should be, or it would be, better used to develop compassion. So I thought of an alternative view, which is, my body may cause me pain today, it may not, but whatever arises, let me respond with self-compassion and patience, and use whatever arises to deepen my understanding of the suffering nature of cyclic existence, and to expand my compassion to all beings who likewise consider pain. Another expectation I have is my mind will not flip out with wild afflictions today. And apparently this means I think I'm a high-level bodhisattva when I find it surprising that really strong afflictions arise. And this just points to how ignorant I am of the first noble truth, the truth of suffering, and that our minds are under the influence of afflictions and karma. And a similar expectation is that other people around me will not flip out with wild afflictions today. Again, it ignores the fact that all sentient beings are under the influence of afflictions and karma. And this view interferes with my ability to have compassion for them. And this is a really crazy expectation that I've discovered. People will do what they say they're going to do. And this distorted view ignores the law of impermanence and the fact that people change their plans. sometimes with really good reasons, sometimes not. But again, they're under the control of afflictions and karma, and they're just doing their best most of the time. Venerable Chojun talks about learning to wisely trust people, where we rely on people to a certain extent, but we're always taking responsibility for our own minds. And, if things don't work out, then we're prepared to respond in a calm and kind way. So then another really fantastic expectation I have is that people will always take my needs into consideration when they speak or act. And this is the self-centered attitude at its finest. It actually appears to be quite a reasonable expectation. I'm a kind person. I take other people's feelings into consideration, so why wouldn't they do the same and avoid pushing my buttons at all costs? But sorry, the world does not work this way. People don't often know what my needs are, and they're often busy trying to sort out their own needs and learning how to express them in a skillful way. So they just don't have the bandwidth to be considering the needs of everybody else around them. And then this expectation is my most sensitive of all, and the source of so much pain when it doesn't happen. People will always inform me ahead of time when important decisions are made that will affect me and will seek my input. So again, this is a self-centered attitude, expecting that anyone making a decision that could remotely affect me will immediately stop what they're doing, come and track me down, and see if I agree with what they're planning. So an alternative view that I'd like to have is people will make decisions based on the information they have and usually act with a good motivation. If they make a decision that I think will harm me or others in some way, I can express that concern in a calm way later on, which will make it more likely that the concern will be heard. And if they do not change their decision based on my feedback, thankfully I've met the Dharma and can use it as an opportunity to develop fortitude and contentment. And this is a very important point that hopefully will counter that whole worldview behind it. I'm never the passive recipient of what life brings. I always have a choice in how to respond. And that is where freedom is to be found, not in perfectly arranging my environment so that I never feel any discomfort or uncertainty, which again would be ignoring the truths of dukkha and impermanence. Another big expectation that has been challenged a lot lately is that people in power will always act responsibly, wisely, and compassionately. And this distorted expectation is the cause of so much unnecessary anger and even violence, as we expect the people in power to be perfect human beings. And we don't extend them much understanding or compassion for the difficult situations that they face. We rarely stop to think, what would it be like to be in their shoes with all the pressure that they face? How could I help this person make a wiser decision? And instead, we expect them to do all the work while we sit back and pick faults. Another unrealistic expectation is that people should not experience unexpected and tragic loss and suffering. Why else would we be surprised or shocked at natural disasters or terrorist attacks or financial collapses or outbreaks of disease? This reminds me of the story that Venerable Chojun told about one Lama who was told about the terrorist attacks of 9/11 or was happening, and he said, yes, samsara is full of suffering. Something to that extent, like he was not shocked. And it's not because he didn't have compassion, but he had a realization of the truth of suffering. And it didn't faze him. And there's a lot of distress caused by the climate crisis. And the Dalai Lama has suggested that the best way that we can respond is to not act emotionally, but with a cool and calm state of mind, so that we can support each other, come up with helpful decisions that will help the situation in the long run. Okay, so some other insidious expectations. Today will be a good day, meaning today I won't encounter any obstacles or any unpleasant emotions or sensations. People will not die suddenly or get sick without giving me and others the chance to prepare for it. This is a rather self-centered view that expects others' bodies to decompose around my schedule. And instead, I'd like to cultivate the view, others and myself may get sick and die today. Let me live each moment with wisdom and compassion and inspire others to do the same. Next is, I will not make any mistakes because I'm a competent, rational person. And this is a really arrogant view, but I bet even the meekest, humblest person has this view in their mind. Because we think that we're competent adults. Why would we make mistakes? And the fact is we are ignorant, or we're imperfect sentient beings. And even if we intend to do the right thing, sometimes there's just unintended consequences. And also it's our motivation that is what determines the true value of our actions. And that if we do make a mistake, we can always apply the four opponent powers, apologize, and make amends. Okay, and this last expectation I found that has also caused me so much pain is that things will be fair. And I had a nice conversation about this recently with one of the seniors in the community, and I saw that I had this kind of social crusader identity I've been carrying around for a really long time. I was so angry until yesterday about the social inequality in this country and racism and discrimination that's just exploded this year. And it's really given me a chance to approach this issue now from I think a wiser point of view than when I was in college and I was just like down with the system. Like Venable Damsha was saying, just burn it down, it's all screwed up. So, yeah, expecting things to be fair. It's mostly a self-centered fairness, it's I want to get what other people have. And in that way, it's a bit distorted, a bit biased. And the fact of the matter is that everyone's experience in samsara will not be the same because we have different karma. And then this fairness is a concept, so there's going to be a lot of variance on exactly what fairness is and who's to decide what's right. But the bottom line is that how others treat me is not the source of my happiness. How I treat others and how I treat myself is the source of my happiness. And realizing this is the real solution to all of the social ills in this world. And this is a pretty unique and radical view that the Dharma holds about how to achieve social justice and equality. And I think it could contribute a lot to today's identity politics. Not how do you have to change, how do I have to change? And this doesn't mean that we condone injustice or turn a blind eye. It just means that we take responsibility for bringing about the change we seek and not just sit back and blame others for our situation and letting anger fester. So once we've identified some of our rules of the universe, it would be really good to apply antidotes ahead of time so that we can correct these mistaken assumptions. And again, by familiarizing ourselves with more realistic points of view, we can decrease our likelihood of getting angry when things don't go our way. So some ways that I thought to do this are to actually write down the mistaken assumptions, write down the opposite, and then go through these at the beginning of the day. I think I really need to do this. Because it's just not getting through. And I found the Buddha's 5 remembrances, I think, are an excellent way to tick off many of the wrong views underlying some of these expectations. And these are, I am the nature of to grow old. I cannot avoid aging. I am subject to illness. I cannot avoid illness. I am of the nature to die. I cannot avoid death. I will be parted from all that is dear and beloved to me. My actions are my only true belongings. I cannot escape the consequences of my actions. Whatever I do, for good or evil, to that I will be heir. And then you can also have more specific counter views, such as fairness is relative, true happiness comes from the mind. And then I thought, try and identify the tender needs behind the expectations and meet them in another way. I found that my needs are often being safe, loved, included, able to influence the environment. And yeah, it's good to proactively do this yourself instead of relying always on other people or just hoping these needs will take care of themselves. And then another way to transform the expectations is to react with compassion whenever we see pain. I mean, usually our instinct is to react with anger or aversion when we see pain in ourselves and others. And I think that the phrase "no mud, no lotus" can remind us that the most painful situations are actually the best ones to help us develop compassion, along with other positive qualities like fortitude, joyous effort, renunciation. And we'll also have more compassion for people and not get angry at them for being so irrational. And then learn to laugh at ourselves when we've calmed down and see how silly our expectations are. I laughed really hard at some of these expectations once I had them down on paper because I could see just how unrealistic they are, such as people will always take my needs into consideration when they speak and act. And people will always inform me ahead of time when they make important decisions that affect me and will seek my input. Yet when these expectations have been violated in the past, such as a couple days ago, I found myself reacting or maybe exploding with sadness and distrust. And I was able to see in that case that tender needs, such as the need for consideration, contribution, and a shared reality, were not being met. So I want to ask the community if you had any other ideas or experiences with working with your unrealistic expectations and how you've overcome some of those.
One of the ones that can trip me up is that I've been living in this community for some years, and I have this idea that people really know me. And so they'll behave in a way that is in accord with kind of what I want and how I go. And so I remind myself that, there isn't one solid me that, everybody's going to know. I'm changing all the time as they are. So it's ridiculous to think that there's anything to pin down and hold on to because we're all evolving and transforming all the time.
On that same bent, I've been here long enough that people should trust me of my wisdom and what I know what's going on. And that's not true. As Venerable Jigme said, you can be any place as long as you want to be, but what you do at the time there makes all the difference. And so I've had to really just open up my heart to the wisdom and the absolute creativity of the community and bring myself down off of that pedestal that says, the time we spend anywhere doing anything is relative to what we get out of it. So if I spent half of my life here at the Abbey thinking that I had something that nobody else had, which was longevity, it doesn't matter if I sat up on a pedestal and said, I'm up here knowing all of this, when in fact it was just a bunch of pride. So that I bring myself down to where I can be open and enthusiastic about what I can learn from others. So it was a real test of my coming down from arrogance to pride. But that was one of my big rules of the universe, is the longer you're here, the smarter you get. But that's not necessarily true.
I've learned over the years, no matter what, most important is harmony in the community. So because Venerable Shutten was also mentioning years ago, when we have projects in mind and we don't work harmoniously together, the projects are of no need. So also for my personal practice, if I'm not in harmony with others, my practice will not progress. As we just recently heard, if there's disharmony, you will have no enlightenment. So that is what I have in forefront in my mind when there are certain expectations and conflicts arising. Then I try to make it to my priority to gain harmony.
Sounds like a lot of the expectations are about other people and how they see us. Maybe because we see ourselves through other people's eyes. And so I just hope that by learning to see these, there will be more harmony, there will be less emotionality, less explosions, and that we can stay in the present moment, and instead of reacting, to respond with the values that really matter to us, like compassion and harmony and bodhicitta. Thank you.